Alright, what is up YouTube? It is K-Rod here. I'm back with another good video for today. I wanted to make this video to cover, I guess that the situation with David Benavidez talking all that smack about Mr. Jermall Charlo, which I have no problem with that. That's all part of boxing. I think David Benavidez, he's a terrific fighter, but I think that the biggest thing with David Benavidez, he has a bit of contradictions in what he believes in. And I think when you take a look at how he moves in the sport of boxing, he is a good fighter. Don't get it twisted. I think David Benavidez is the future of 168. But let's just be honest that this guy was not the same guy that said that he would knock out Caleb Plant. But yet, why isn't David Benavidez pressing the issue to become Plant's mandatory? If he could, find an easier shot back to a title run, because, I'm not gonna disregard David. He's a fantastic, dangerous fighter that knows how to fight, very defensive pressure wise, and his style is just, all wrong for Charlo if Charlo does not use any proper defensive mechanism tools to keep David back. And I guess from the Montiel fight, it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows in like what Charlo was doing in that fight, because it's like he was kind of like allowing Montiel to regain his, I guess his composure and have all the right proper stamina on him to carry that late game into the later championship rounds. And that's what made Charlo get a little bit gassed in the later rounds, which allowed Montiel to hit him at really awkward moments of the fight, which could have easily been a knockout in certain manners, because when Montiel hit him with some mean shots, Charlo's hands almost gave out. He kind of looked like he was about to get knocked out. It didn't look like it, but Charlo, he basically beat Montiel at his own game, technically going toe to toe. And I'm never let the one to bring racial ethnicity into boxing, but while boxing is like the most racist sport in the world, I guess like my rule of thumb is that you never go toe to toe, with a Mexican fighter, because Mexican fighters always have that heart mentality to keep going. Not every Mexican fighter. Some Mexican fighters are not built like that. But for certain Mexican fighters like Montiel, he's not afraid to go, to basically get scrappy with you. And it may not look like it of how he fights, but what he did to Charlo is what other, other middleweights probably couldn't handle from him. Which Montiel, everybody wants to say he's a good fighter, but I don't think so. I think Montiel, he obviously had the advantage over Charlo, because Charlo, he wasn't being disciplined in that fight. Because Charlo, he was supposed to stop Montiel, and I actually had Charlo brutally knocking him out. So Montiel, he definitely got some notoriety for going 12 rounds with Charlo, but do I think he, does the same exact thing with like a guy like J-Rock, or maybe anybody that could be a threat at 160? I don't think so. I guess we're gonna have to see that when Montiel, returns back, on a Showtime, fight card or PBC. Because it's not like Montiel, he's a bad fighter. He's an amazing fighter. It's just that what Charlo had not done to Montiel, earlier in the fight, Montiel left basically Montiel left so many opportunities for Charlo to hit him, and Charlo never pushed on that gas pedal to make Montiel uncomfortable. Because Montiel, he's a very awkward fighter with like a lot of power. So maybe that's why Charlo, he didn't want to try to force out the issue too much, because he don't want to get knocked out. But I don't think that's really the case. He just wasn't so active by working the body as much to Montiel, because Montiel, he was basically being very, very hesitant in trying to go in, and he was just trying to survive. So I think if I'm Charlo, I should just work his body, because I know this guy, he's going to drop his hands sooner than later, because those body shots are going to catch up to him. And I think that's what Charlo didn't do. He respected Montiel way too much, and he didn't take that risk with him, which, I understand, it's boxing, anything could happen. But if I'm Charlo, I should just keep using that jab, similar to what Floyd Mayweather does with his opponents. He just jab, jab, go back, and then he does another 1-2 to the face, and then jab, jab to the body, because it makes all the sense in the world to do that, because later into the later rounds, that's going to cause an opponent to break down, and you're going to methodically catch them with something that they don't see, and then boom, it's going to be a pretty easy knockout for you to get. But Charlo, I think it was simply due to his ring rust. I don't like the fact of how Jermall Charlo, he gets, pretty much a 8-month layoff, or he decided to take an 8-month layoff, and he comes back to the ring, and he doesn't look like the same fighter compared to what he did with Derevyanchenko, or I forgot what the opponent previously to that. I think it was Dennis Hogan. But those fights previously before, those fights didn't really make him look any vulnerable to what you see now. Because, the toughest fight ever for Jermall Charlo was the, Brandon Adams and Mate Koraba fight, which, obviously, those fights alone are very dangerous for him, because those guys actually had a pretty, slick and awkward style. And don't get it twisted. Jermall, he's a really good competitor, and he knows how to outread people. But I kind of feel like either his peak is coming to an end, or he's just not being responsibly, defensive enough to the point where he should not be taking unnecessary blows and then not trying to trade with people that he knows he can't be trading with. Because the way he looked like out there against Montiel, he definitely would be stopped by David Benavidez. And David Benavidez said that the way Jermall Charlo looked out there against Montiel, he basically said he would stop him. So my only issue with that is that if you can stop him, why not just go down to 160 and challenge for his title? Because I think the biggest contradiction out of this is saying that David Benavidez, he wants to force Charlo to come up to 168, which Charlo, he's never had a fight, at 168. So I think if I'm David Benavidez, maybe take that risk to go down to 160 to see how you feel. Because even though that it is 8 pounds, and I'm sure he could shed off 8 pounds, but from the look of his body frame and how he's built, I understand why David wants him to come up to 168, but you're the challenger, and he's, he's like the champion. So I think maybe for Jermall's, political goals in boxing, he just wants to unify the division and then move up to 168 after, which I think that's not really a smart idea, because I don't see how he's going to make anything right at 160. Because let's just say if Demetrius Andrade comes up with some bullshit to say, oh, well, I could fight you on Showtime, but there needs to be like a catch or something, like I want like a rematch or some shit like that. If you beat me, no, like Jermall Charlo should just get all the belts if he's able to. But if Gennady Golovkin, if he's not willing to fight Jermall Charlo and he's willing to just vacate his belts, and those two belts for the IBF and the WBA will be available, it's like Jermall Charlo, he's just going to have to fight 2 more times at 160, and that's just going to be, a lot harder for him to just come up to 168, because by that time Canelo, he'll probably be gone at 168, because it's not like, if I'm Canelo, why the hell should I be waiting for him? And I think Canelo, he's probably thinking inside his head, like, he's definitely going to come after me, but it's like, when? Because Canelo, he's trying to obviously strategically get all these belts at 168, and then he's probably going to vacate when David Benavidez rings up his number, because Canelo, he don't want to fight him. So my only issue is just that, like, what is Canelo Alvarez going to do in that meantime frame? Because Jermall Charlo seems like that he's trying to get all these fights in before the year's up, and I mean, we have like a pretty good, like, I would say like 6 to 7 months before the year's up. But it's like Jermall Charlo knows that if Triple G didn't want to fight him then what makes him think that he's going to get that fight with Triple G, in the future? Let's just say if he beats Ryota Murata, because Ryota Murata, he don't even want to fight Andrade and Charlo either. So I mean, I guess we're gonna have to figure out that puzzle, if that ever comes to fruition, because I mean, Charlo should automatically become a mandatory for that other side of the street, for the other belt that he wants, for undisputed. Because my belief is that if you're a champion and you're trying to face another champion, you should automatically become a mandatory, because it doesn't make any fucking sense why all these champions play keep away and they don't want you to get a piece of their, they don't want you to get a piece of their gold, and they want to keep that there as a religious sanctioning, how should I say, as a religious sanctioning, I would say as like a gemstone for those people to not want to see you take out their beloved champion of the world. And they just want to keep that train rolling to say, nah, the champion should not unify with you, the champion should just keep fighting mandatories, and then that'll be good for the division. No, that's not how fucking boxing works. It's either you come here to face the best, or you get the hell out of boxing. It's either the best, it's either the best fight the best, or the best don't ever fight the best, and then they end up leaving the sport pretty quick, because that's how boxing works. If you're not going to fight your contemporaries, then why the hell are you in the sport of boxing? So David Benavidez, he does make a good point to say he would knock out Charlo, which I could see it happening. But here's my biggest issue: what are you going to do to force that fight? Because David Benavidez, if I'm not mistaken, he can move down to 160, and he could challenge Charlo for that belt. So if Andre don't want to fight him, and David's willing to come down to 160 to face Charlo, I'll give him a lot of respect. He may not look as big at 160, which I'm pretty sure, like, after weigh-ins, he's going to be like a good solid 170, and Charlo's going to be a good solid maybe like 168 pounder, depending on how much that they could rehydrate, because both of them are pretty big dudes. But if David's willing to face Charlo, then I would take that risk now, because even if he loses, I understand David Benavidez, he's not the type of guy that I would think that he's perfect all the way, but for his weight issues in the boxing world, it's like he just needs to learn how to probably diet better, because it's not like his body is like still growing. He's 24 years old, and your body technically stops growing when I think you're like about 26 or something, but I'm not too sure. But if David Benavidez can pull that off to make weight at 160, and then he's able to rehydrate up to at least 168 or 170, then I think that would be a lot better for him, because one, he could take that fight. He just needs to train his butt off to make sure that the weight is down, and then if he's able to do it, then good, because that means that he could take that fight with Charlo, and if he wins, he could probably most likely vacate, because he's not wanting to just stay at 160. He just wants to go and fight Charlo. But if I'm David, I would just vacate the belt. Charlo can probably either fight for that belt again, but I don't really want him to do that. I'd rather just have him move up to 168 if he ever loses to a fighter like David Benavidez, instead of having him waste his time at 160 and then come up to 168, which he'll probably be a little bit past his prime by then, because once you hit like 32, 33, it's like that's when the peak is usually coming down to a downhill playing point. But I don't really see how Charlo really falls off unless he's staying active, and that's really why this whole long layoff for Charlo is not good in terms of him not getting fights in. But yet you are training, which is good, but training is a lot different from getting into a fight. Especially in boxing. Because, at least for Canelo, he's staying active. He's fighting bums, but those bums are keeping his butt active. And it's kind of weird that he does that within a span of every 3 months, because he kind of has it planned out to know that he's going to beat these guys. So it's kind of weird that Canelo really has that centralized planning to make sure that he has these fights won. Because if Canelo lost in either one of those fights, like the Billy Joe Saunders fight, that would have been hilarious. Because Canelo, he would have definitely been like, oh no, I lost my opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And it would be insane if Canelo actually really thought like he was going to win every single fight that he planned out. And I just don't understand how he came to that mindset to think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get all these belts and then I'm just gonna like what hang it up, right? I think that's what Canelo's trying to do. He's trying to get all these belts as quickly as possible at 168 because he really thinks he could just beat up Caleb Plant. And I'm sorry to all you Canelo fans, you you guys are like really demented to think that Caleb Plant is going to just sit down and just take a paycheck and leave. Because Caleb Plant, he is nowhere near a Billy Joe Saunders. He's not gonna quit if he gets hurt to a point where he can't take Canelo no more. Caleb is almost similar to Andrade as far as fighting styles go, but if Canelo really thinks that he's gonna take over 168, which is very possible, I think he'll probably become undisputed, but it's not like Canelo is really making any big of a difference, because what if he loses to Caleb Plant? And then when David Benavidez gets his opportunity again to fight for the titles, what the hell is Charlo going to do at that point? Because Charlo knows that if he's going to just focus on getting all the belts at 160, his next fight would definitely be Andrade. I heard from Blue Blood Sports TV that he's willing to fight Andrade. So Andrade just has to pick up that call and get the dices rolling, so that way the fight can be made. And then if he beats up Andrade, I don't even know what Charlo is gonna put on for that date, but I would hope that fight could probably be made in in September. Maybe try to get that fight in by September. Andrade fought in he fought in May. So yeah, September seems like a pretty good date between Charlo and Andrade, because at least that'll set the tone. Because honestly, if Charlo and Andrade, if they could have that fight on pay-per-view and do that on let's just say, I'm just making up a theoretical date here, and I got my calendar in front of me. But if I am Charlo and I want to make this fight, let's try to make the date on either September 11th or do it on Mexican Independence Day weekend, which is on September 16th, which I'm pretty sure, is that a holiday? September 16th. 16th. Yeah, Mexican holiday. Yeah, Mexican Independence Day. So then what the hell is Cinco de Mayo? What is Cinco de Mayo? What the hell is that? Is that just is that just some bullshit holiday? Oh, the Battle of Puebla. Okay, yeah, that's when the Mexicans defeated the Spanish. Okay, good. Yeah, and that's when they defeated France too. Got it. I got you. So Cinco de Mayo is just basically the anniversary of the Battle of Puebla. But yeah, I'll definitely keep that on my calendar, because I got love for Mexico and I love the Mexican heritage. But that being said, Charlo, if I'm Charlo, I want to try to get that fight in September, because I don't know when Charlo will probably become 31, because time is not on his side. I believe he turns 31 in May 9th. Oh shit, he already just turned 31. So the Charlo brothers, they're both 31 years old, but that is pretty good because that means that Andrade, I know he just turned what 34, right? Yeah, Demetrius, Trius, Andrade, yeah. I know he's like, oh yeah, Andrade is about 33. So yeah, that's not bad. I mean, Andrade, he is doing what he has to do. So it's good that he does everything right. But if he could get that fight with Charlo, I like to see that because he just fought Liam Williams, and that was back in April. Yeah, that was back in April, and Charlo just fought in June. So I would try to get this fight in by definitely September. September seems about right because Gennady Golovkin, he's going to fight that Ryota Murata on December 31st, which is going to be some Asian holiday. I don't know what the hell that is, but if he beats up Ryota Murata, then that means Gennady could probably take one last payday against Charlo and Andrade, and that makes all the sense in the world because if Charlo does become successful in Undisputed against Gennady Golovkin, or if Andrade beats up Charlo, either one of these guys are going to elevate their careers to the next, level. And then that just means that when these guys probably move up, because I'm definitely going to be seeing, I definitely want to see Charlo and Andrade move up to 168, because if they move up to 168 and face David Benavidez and face Canelo, it's definitely going to speak volumes, because his brother, Jermall Charlo will most likely want to come up to 160, and then he's going to take everybody out too, because 160 is actually pretty weak right now, because right now Lara, he's up here, which he's still dangerous. Lara is still a problem for a lot of people, and I would say other guys such as Jaime Munguia, which I'd say he's not really gonna have too much of a good opportunity, other than he's probably gonna wait it out. I think Jaime, he's going to wait until Charlo and Andrade leaves, which it doesn't make any fucking sense, but I think if I'm Charlo, my last two fights at 160 would probably have to be Andrade, and then the winner of Ryota Murata and Gennady Golovkin, because Charlo, he should be forcing that mandatory position, or he should force a mandatory position to be next in line to face those guys for that fight. And I hope Charlo is doing that, because Charlo wants Undisputed, so he doesn't care what's going to happen out of this whole squabble. He just wants to get Undisputed. So it's good enough that Charlo, he's pushing the issue, and he's not having to hold this up, because he could have been Undisputed he would have been Undisputed a lot quicker if he didn't get fucked over by Canelo Alvarez. If he beat Canelo, because Canelo at that time, he was the champion, and if Charlo had beat him, then the only thing that Charlo needed to do was that all he needed to do was just go after that WBA, and then he could have easily defeated Andrade and then go after Triple G, because if Canelo did not give up his belt to move up to 168, because he was about to fight Triple G for that third fight, and a lot of people didn't want Triple G and Canelo 3, which I didn't want to see that. I kind of thought that those fights alone didn't really sell, and it was more like fights that people didn't want to see, because both of these guys were ducking Charlo and Andrade. But either way, those fights alone were pretty much the reason why Charlo and Andrade got held up so long into the division, because Charlo, he was already a world champion at 154, because we could see that his very first title came from Cornelius Bunrich, and he knocked him out. And Bunrich, he's a really good fighter, by the way. He was also a former world champion, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Bunridge, he won the IBF at super welterweight back in 2014, and then he lost it to Jermall Charlo. Yeah, so it's not like, it's not like he's like a bad fighter. He's a really good fighter. He beat some really good names too. But Jermall Charlo did his thing, man. He definitely did what he had to do. So good for him. But ever since then, when he had the title at 154, he moved up anyway because Canelo didn't want to fight him, including his brother. So it makes all the sense in the world why Canelo held him up for at least pretty much a whole year of him not becoming champion, because he would have been champion back in 2018, but Canelo, he ducked him. So it made all the sense in the world why he was just never considered, a world titleist, because Canelo, he, straight up ducked him. But I'm happy that David Benavidez called out Charlo, because I want to see the fight, man. I want to see what David Benavidez is about. And I think it makes all the sense in the world to have that fight. So I think if this fight really does go down, I think stylistically David Benavidez would beat a Jermall Charlo the way he looked like against Montiel, but a Jermall Charlo that's focused and that has better defensive pressure and defensive aggression as far as outreading the opponent and not letting the opponent come into the inside. Jermall Charlo could easily knock out David Benavidez, and I think if I'm David Benavidez, I should take a fight with Charlo after I get that fight with Uzcategui, which I don't understand why he's fighting him. He should just try to force being a mandatory for Caleb Plant, because it's like it makes all the sense in the world to go after Caleb Plant. But the problem with that is probably Caleb is about to fight Canelo probably in September. And I mean, we're already 3 months away from that fight. And then we got Wilder Fury 3 in July, which I have Wilder defeating the crap out of Fury and killing him. But after that, it's like anybody else coming up at middleweight, coming from middleweight up to super middleweight, it's really not that big of a competition pool. So, I mean, it's pretty open and it's pretty weak right now. So the division itself doesn't really matter, because, we got some really good competition. So the competition is slowly increasing. But if I'm David Benavidez, let's try to take a risk with Charlo after the Uzcategui fight, because we already know. Well, actually no, because when is David fighting? David has to be fighting him. I know he has to be fighting Uzcategui sometime in August or July, but I'm almost positive he's fighting him. Yeah, he's fighting him in August. Okay, so he's gonna fight Uzcategui on August 28th. Oh shit, that's about fucking 5 months. Yeah, that's about 5 fucking months, because the fight before that, the Angulo fight, when David got stripped, that's about September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Bro, he's been out the ring for 7 months. Prior from the Alexis Angulo fight leading to the Ronald Ellis fight. And now he took a 5-month layoff, and now he's fighting. I mean, I think David should at least take a good 2.5 months and then come back to fight on your 3rd month. So I don't know. I mean, he's still young, so it's like it doesn't really matter to him, because it's like he has everything going. So I mean, he'll be 25 by December 17th. So yeah, so by August he can get one last. Well, I'd say by August he can get a fight in, and then he could fight Charlo. If he's willing to fight Charlo. But I'm pretty sure he's going to become a mandatory for Canelo if Canelo has balls to fight him. But if Canelo does not have balls to fight him, then David's probably just going to he's probably just going to stay at super middleweight to get all his titles back. And then, the other competition down the road that's going to fight him is probably going to be fucking who? It's probably going to be Edgar Berlanga. It's going to be who's that Cuban guy? David Morrell. Yeah, the homie David's going to be up there, and other fighters such as, I mean, shit, maybe Anthony Durrell. I'm not too sure about that fight. That probably wouldn't make any sense. Maybe Lerone Richards. I mean, Lerone Richards is not really that good of a fighter. He's not really fighting any good. Yeah, he's not fighting good competition. Like, this guy is just fighting like low tier level opponents. But I mean, if I'm David Benavidez, I should probably go after. I mean, after the Plant and Canelo fight for Undisputed, if Plant is successful, Plant should be fighting David Benavidez. If David's going to be, well, obviously David's going to become the mandatory for the winner of those fights. But in the meantime, well, actually no. After this fight with Jose, he just needs to wait for the winner. That's basically what David's probably doing. He's waiting for the winner of these two fights, because he's already number one by the WBC, and I don't know how the hell he's not number one for the IBF, but I would try to get that spot too if I'm David Benavidez, and then boom, he could go about his way, do everything right, because Edgar Berlanga, he's number 17 in the world, so he's definitely competing at the world level. He's doing what he has to do. I don't know who the hell he's going to fight in his next fight. I think Berlanga, if I'm him, I would probably go after maybe a top 25 opponent. He said he wanted to get Gabriel Rosado. That would be a really tough fight for him. And I think stylistically, Gabriel Rosado would have a much bigger outcome in that fight. And I actually do respect that as far as like a win goes, because it shows that Gabriel Rosado, he has clarity in a win if he is defeated in a guy like Edgar Berlanga. So I think the only last few guys of super middleweight that's going to dominate is going to be David Benavidez. It's going to be Edgar Berlanga. And then I would have maybe David Morrell. I don't see why he's not on here. He should be on here. Like, I don't understand why he's not even on here. That's pretty disrespectful. But I mean, either or, it doesn't really matter. Like, I mean, David Morrell, he's going to take over the division, so he's going to fight Mario Cazares. That was the Mexican that called out Edgar Berlanga. I think he's going to get knocked the hell out. That's going to be a pretty funny fight too. So I think this guy, he's in for a pretty bad day. And yeah, I don't know, man. I think super middleweight's going to be flaming with some really good competition. So we'll just see what happens, honestly, because we really have some really good, dangerous fighters. And I mean, I myself, I'm a southpaw, so my favorite southpaw fighters that are actually fighting would be David Morrell. We have, obviously Bektemir lost, but he's a good fight. He's a good fighter. Bektemir Melikuziev. Let's see. We got Mr. Billy Joe Saunders. Wow, he's a southpaw. All right, southpaw gang all day. We got Gabriel Rosado. Yep. Actually, he's a southpaw. Actually, I find that... Well, actually, no. He's actually orthodox. I looked at Carlos Goncora. My bad. But, I mean, a lot of good southpaw fighters. Andre Durrell. I like Andre. The younger version was awesome. But, I mean, we definitely have a lot of good competition coming up at super middleweight. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting battle to see where things go in the later future. Because Ronald Ellis, he's definitely out the picture, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a world title, because you never know what's going to happen. Because just because he lost to David Benavidez doesn't mean he could still get more fights in the future to elevate himself faster to a world title. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think David Benavidez, he has to keep his words pretty small, especially to a guy like Jermall Charlo. I don't think him and Charlo is a pretty good fight at 168, but if he's willing to fight him at 160, I wouldn't mind that fight. But where things are politically with his career and Charlo's career, Charlo seems to be wanting to unify all the belts for Undisputed. But if I'm David Benavidez, if I can't get a Canelo fight, which I'm pretty sure he will get the Canelo fight if Canelo does have balls to fight him. But if Caleb Plant beats him, David's definitely going to be next in line, and he is like the mandatory for the WBC. So either way, I think Mauricio Sulaiman is setting everything up for David Benavidez to take over 168 when Canelo gets undisputed or Caleb Plant gets undisputed. So after undisputed, David Benavidez will probably take over 168. But like I don't think David Benavidez should even take a fight with Charlo, because it just doesn't make any sense as far as him moving down to 160 when he's already being offered. Yeah, he's already being promised a opportunity to be next in line to fight for the mandatory position, which that's why he's gonna fight Jose Uzcategui, and he's gonna beat him up, and then he'll be automatically next in line for the winner of Caleb Plant and Canelo Alvarez. So it makes all the sense in the world to do that if I'm David Benavidez. And I mean, if I'm Canelo, I would probably take that fight with David Benavidez if he's able to have balls and have manhood to actually fight one of his own Mexican bloodline. And I think it makes all the sense in the world to do that if I'm Canelo Alvarez. And I think for any Canelo dick-riding fans, they should be pushing for that fight and advocating for it, not trying to downplay David Benavidez and try to treat him like try to treat him like he's some little kid, in the game, and he's never been in world title fights before, blah blah blah. It's like, nah, he's been in some really good wars, and I mean, David Benavidez, he's still learning, but he's still one of the best fighters out there. And I think when him and Charlo face each other, and him and Plant face each other, and him and Canelo face each other, David Benavidez, he's going to give you the 110% version of him. And I think David Benavidez, for him saying that he'll KO Charlo, it's good for the selling of that fight. But I think David Benavidez, he needs to just focus at 168 and not think about 160, because I don't think Charlo will ever want to come up to 168 until he accomplishes his goal for 160, because it seems like that's where his energy is. So I'm not surprised. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I just wanted to vent this out to everybody and just talk about that. Alright, thank you. I'll see y'all later. Bye.